My name is Yasmin. I'm 28 years old. And on April 22nd, 2018, I died. For 4 minutes and 12 seconds, my heart stopped beating after I swallowed a bottle of pills. But that wasn't my first attempt to escape this world. What I'm about to share with you began when I was just 8 years old. You see, I wasn't supposed to survive that night in 2018, just like I wasn't supposed to survive my childhood. But God had different plans for my life. I was born in a dusty village outside Aleppo, Syria in 1995. My father was a religious scholar. My mother, his obedient echo. In our home, sacred texts weren't just recited, they were twisted into weapons. Girls didn't laugh unless permitted, didn't dream unless allowed. I learned to become invisible before I learned to become myself. Every dawn at 4 a.m., rough hands shook me awake for prayers. My tiny fingers trembled through ritual washings, terrified that one mistake would unleash my father's fury. While my brothers kicked soccer balls and filled the courtyard with joy, I learned to scrub floors and cook meals. While they attended school and made friends, I memorized verses about female obedience and silence. I wasn't a daughter in that house. I was merchandise awaiting sale. Village women visited regularly to inspect me like farmers examining livestock. They examined my teeth, commented on my complexion, discussed my potential fertility. I was 6 years old. My hands still reached for dolls, but strangers evaluated me as someone's future property. My father paraded me before these visitors, cataloging what he called my assets. She's compliant, he announced with pride. Silent. Quick to learn. Never questions authority. Their stares felt like violations I couldn't escape. At age 6, older men with graying beards and expressionless eyes began appearing more frequently. They sat in our front room, sipping mint tea while debating my future, as though I were furniture. They discussed me in third person, weighing my value, my potential, my cost. My mother dragged me before them with instructions to stand motionless while they evaluated me. I remember feeling microscopic, powerless, terrified. My childhood became endless preparation for a life I couldn't comprehend. I mastered elaborate cooking while my own stomach ached from hunger. I perfected ironing techniques while my own clothes hung in tatters. I learned to anticipate demands and fulfill them before being asked. Every single day was training for becoming the ideal wife to a stranger. On my 7th birthday, instead of presents and cake, I received a death sentence disguised as good news. My father assembled our entire family in the main room and delivered an announcement that shattered my world. Congratulations, he declared with a smile that froze my blood. You're betrothed to Sheikh Omar. Sheikh Omar was 47 years old, with 3 existing wives. I was 7 and still believed in happy endings, but this became my living nightmare. The room exploded in celebration. Adults clapped and praised divine will for this supposed blessing. But I felt like I was suffocating beneath their joy. I wanted to scream, to flee, to vanish. Instead, I stood paralyzed while adults who saw me as currency decided my fate. Pause and consider. What were you doing at age 7? Playing games? Learning to read? Making friends? My engagement marked the death of any hope for normalcy. From that moment, every day counted down to my imprisonment. My childhood officially ended on March 18, 2004, the day I became a wife at 8 years old. I wore a white dress that felt like a burial shroud, suffocating me with the weight of my stolen future. The entire village celebrated while I screamed silently inside my own mind. Women decorated my small hands with intricate henna while I wished I could disappear. Men fired guns skyward in celebration while I felt myself dying. I remember thinking, God, if you're real, why are you allowing this to happen to an innocent child? The wedding festivities continued for 3 days. But for me, it stretched like an eternity of torture. People constantly congratulated me, telling me how fortunate I was, how blessed this union would be. Fortunate. I was 8 years old being handed to a man old enough to be my grandfather. The music blasted. The food overflowed. But I couldn't swallow anything, couldn't smile, couldn't pretend happiness. My mother had instructed me to be grateful, to honor our family, to make them proud. But all I felt was overwhelming terror. That first night, I discovered what hell feels like on earth. I won't describe the details because some wounds are too sacred to expose. But I'll tell you this. Innocence, once destroyed, changes everything about how you perceive the world. I aged decades in minutes. The little girl who played with dolls died that night, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. I wasn't a wife in that house. I was a servant, a possession, an object to be used whenever Sheikh Omar desired. My day began at 4 a.m. preparing his breakfast before dawn prayers. I stood on wooden crates to reach the stove, my small hands struggling with pots too heavy for my frame. After breakfast, I cleaned the entire house while his 3 other wives watched and criticized my every movement. The other wives despised me from the moment I arrived. They called me the child, the burden, the mistake. They competed viciously for Sheikh Omar's attention and saw me as unwanted competition. Even though I wanted nothing more than to disappear, they would pinch me when he wasn't looking, hide my food, blame me for things I didn't do. I had no allies in that house. No one to protect me. No one who cared if I lived or died. Contact with my family was completely forbidden. Sheikh Omar declared I belonged to him now, that my old life was finished. No letters. No visits. No phone calls. I was severed from everyone I had ever known. The isolation was almost worse than the abuse because it made me feel like I had never existed at all. By age 10, I had broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a shattered spirit. Physical abuse became as routine as morning prayers. I would be beaten for crying, beaten for not smiling, beaten for walking too loudly, beaten for breathing wrong. My body became a map of violence, covered in bruises and scars that told the story of my captivity. The only books allowed in that house were religious texts about women's inferiority and submission. I was taught that my suffering was divine will, that questioning it was sinful, that accepting it was virtuous. I began to believe I deserved this treatment, that I was born to be someone's property. Look inside your own heart right now. Have you ever felt that hopeless, that completely abandoned by God and humanity? February 19th, 2009. I was 14 and had reached my limit. That morning, Sheikh Omar had beaten me unconscious because I had accidentally broken one of his tea glasses. I woke up on the kitchen floor, blood trickling from my nose, my ribs screaming in agony. The house was empty. His other wives had gone to the market, and he had left for the mosque. I was completely alone with my despair. I dragged myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. The girl looking back at me was unrecognizable. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, bruises covering most of my face. I had stopped crying months ago because tears require hope, and hope had abandoned me long ago. I had stopped praying because God seemed deaf to the cries of little girls. I had stopped dreaming because dreams are for people with futures. That afternoon, I made a decision. I decided that night would be my last night on earth. I couldn't endure another day of abuse, another night of terror, another moment of feeling worthless and unwanted. I found Sheikh Omar's hunting knife in the kitchen drawer, the same knife he had threatened me with countless times. My hands shook as I carried it to the bathroom, but my resolve was steady. I sat on the cold tile floor. The blade pressed against my wrist. I could feel my pulse beating against the metal. I whispered what I thought would be my final prayer. God, I'm coming to meet you. Please don't send me back to this hell. Please let me find peace somewhere. Anywhere but here. I closed my eyes and prepared to end my suffering forever. Just as I was about to cut, something impossible happened. The room suddenly filled with light, not from any lamp or window, but from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was warm, golden, unlike anything I had ever experienced. A presence entered that small bathroom that I cannot explain in human words. The air itself seemed to vibrate with love and power. I heard a voice clear as day, speaking directly to my heart. My daughter, put down the knife. It wasn't Arabic. It wasn't Syrian. But I understood every word perfectly. The voice was gentle but commanding, familiar yet completely foreign. I looked up and saw a man standing before me, though the bathroom door hadn't opened. He had scars on his hands and feet, and his eyes held a love I had never experienced. It was gentle, pure, unconditional, nothing like the harsh religiosity I had known my entire life. He knelt beside me, this God who kneels beside broken children, and spoke words that rewrote my entire understanding of the divine. "I know your pain, child," he said. "I felt every blow you received. I have been with you in every dark moment, weeping when you wept. You are not a mistake, not a burden, not property. You are my beloved daughter, created for purpose, destined for freedom." For the first time in my life, I felt valuable. Not as someone's wife or servant or possession, but as myself. Just me, sitting on a bathroom floor with a knife in my hand, being told I was beloved by the creator of the universe. "I am going to get you out of here," he continued, "but you must trust me. When the opportunity comes, take it. I will make a way where there seems to be no way. Your suffering will become someone else's salvation." The knife fell from my hands as hope flooded my heart for the first time in years. Within days of that supernatural encounter, coincidences started happening that were impossible to ignore. A Christian relief worker came to our village, something that had never occurred in my 6 years of living there. Her name was Rebecca, and somehow she ended up at our house offering medical aid to families in need. Sheikh Omar surprisingly allowed her inside because she was helping treat his elderly mother's arthritis. Rebecca had auburn hair and green eyes. But more importantly, her eyes held the same love I had seen in Jesus. When she looked at me, she didn't see property or a burden. She saw a person worth saving. While Sheikh Omar was distracted with his mother's treatment, Rebecca quietly examined my obvious injuries. She spoke softly in Arabic, asking about my bruises, but I was too terrified to respond honestly. Then something miraculous happened. While treating a cut on my arm, Rebecca whispered in English, a language I had picked up from television years earlier. "If you want help, blink twice." My heart nearly stopped. I looked into her eyes and blinked twice as hard as I could. She slipped a tiny piece of paper into my palm so quickly that no one else noticed. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep before reading her note by moonlight. "Meet me at the village, tomorrow at noon. Jesus sent me to find you." I knew without question that this was the opportunity Jesus had promised. The same Jesus who had saved me from suicide was now sending someone to save me from slavery. The next morning brought a series of impossible events. Sheikh Omar received an urgent message that his brother had died in Homs, requiring him to travel immediately for the funeral. This was the first time in 6 years he had left me alone for more than a few hours. His 3 wives decided to accompany him, claiming they needed to pay respects and buy supplies in the city. Suddenly, I was completely alone for the first time since my wedding day. Standing at that well at exactly noon, I faced the biggest decision of my young life. Stay and die slowly, or trust a stranger and possibly live. My legs shook as I waited, wondering if Rebecca would actually come, wondering if this was all just another cruel dream. Then I heard a car engine approaching, and my heart began racing. Rebecca appeared exactly at noon, driving a small white car. She rolled down the window and looked directly at me. "Get in now and don't look back," she said urgently. "This is your only chance." I took the biggest leap of faith in my 14 years of life and climbed into that car without taking anything except the clothes on my back. We drove for 6 hours straight toward the Lebanese border. At every checkpoint, every police stop, we passed through completely untouched. The guards barely glanced at our documents before waving us through. "It's like we're invisible," Rebecca whispered in amazement. I knew angels were hiding us from human eyes, just as Jesus had promised. That night, in a safe house in Beirut, I experienced something I had forgotten existed. Safety. No locks on my door. No chains on my body. No fear of being hurt while I slept. Rebecca brought me clean clothes that actually fit my teenage body instead of the adult clothing I had been forced to wear. For the first time in years, I looked in a mirror and saw a person instead of property. Now, ask yourself this question. When did someone last risk everything to save you? Rebecca introduced me to the Jesus of the Bible, not the Isa of the Quran that I had learned about in my childhood. This Jesus was completely different from anything I had been taught. I learned he wasn't just a prophet who would return someday. He was God who became human, who chose to suffer, so I could be free. Every page I read in that small Arabic Bible rewrote my understanding of divine love. In Islam, I had been taught that God was distant, angry, demanding perfect obedience from flawed humans. Allah felt unreachable, constantly disappointed in my failures, keeping a record of every sin. But Jesus showed me God was close, loving, giving freely to broken people. The contrast was staggering. In my old religion, I had to earn God's love through perfect submission and ritual. In Christianity, God's love was freely given despite my brokenness and rebellion. The healing process began slowly, like learning to walk again after years of being crippled. Therapy helped me understand fundamental truths I had never heard before. I wasn't broken goods. The abuse wasn't my fault. My suffering wasn't God's will for my life. These concepts were revolutionary to someone who had been taught that questioning authority was sinful and accepting abuse was virtuous. Jesus began healing memories I thought would haunt me forever. Not erasing them, but transforming their power over me. The nightmares became less frequent. The fear of men began to fade. Slowly, impossibly, laughter returned to my life. I had forgotten what it sounded like when it came from my own mouth. The first time I laughed at something Rebecca said, we both cried tears of joy. 6 months after my rescue, I was baptized in the Mediterranean Sea. The symbolism wasn't lost on me as I walked into those warm waters. Going under that water, I buried the scared little girl who had been Sheikh Omar's property. Coming up, gasping and sputtering, I was reborn as a daughter of the King of Kings. For the first time in my life, I chose my own name, Yasmin, which means jasmine flower, because that's what Jesus called me, something beautiful that blooms even after harsh winters. At 15, I entered formal school for the first time in my life. Learning to read beyond basic religious texts opened worlds I never knew existed. Mathematics showed me the order and beauty in God's creation. Science revealed the complexity of the universe He spoke into being. Literature introduced me to stories of hope and redemption that mirrored my own. Knowledge became another form of freedom, expanding my understanding of who I could become. I discovered I was intelligent, capable, valuable beyond anything I had been taught to believe about myself. My mind had been starved for education, and now it devoured every book, every lesson, every opportunity to learn. The teachers were amazed at how quickly I absorbed information. But I knew I was making up for lost time. Jesus' words from that bathroom encounter echoed constantly in my mind. Your suffering will become someone else's salvation. I began to understand that God had saved me not just for my own benefit, but to save others still trapped in similar situations. My pain had purpose. My story had power. My survival had meaning beyond my own happiness. I began training with Rebecca's organization to help other trafficking victims, learning to identify signs of abuse, understanding trauma responses, developing skills to offer hope to hopeless people. Every rescued girl reminded me why Jesus had rescued me first. I wasn't saved to live a comfortable life. I was saved to become a lifeline for others drowning in despair. Today at 28, I'm married to Nathan, a man who loves Jesus and loves me in ways I never thought possible. He asked my permission before even holding my hand, something that shocked me because I had never been asked permission for anything in my life. Our relationship is built on respect, equality, and mutual devotion. He sees me as his partner, not his property. I learned what real love looks like through him. Patient, kind, protective without being controlling. Nathan courted me for 2 years before proposing, never rushing, never demanding, always honoring my boundaries. When he asked me to marry him, he got down on one knee and said he wanted to spend his life protecting my heart, not breaking it. Our wedding day was everything my first wedding wasn't. Joyful, chosen, celebrated by people who truly loved us both. I wore white again, but this time it represented purity restored, not innocence stolen. I run a safe house for trafficking victims in Jordan now, and we've rescued 247 girls and women in the past 5 years. Each rescue reminds me why Jesus saved me first. My greatest joy comes from seeing other victims discover their worth in Christ, watching them transform from broken captives to confident daughters of God. Every girl who walks through our doors could have been me. And everyone who leaves empowered carries a piece of my heart with her. The work isn't easy. Some girls arrive so damaged they can barely speak. Others are addicted to drugs their captors use to control them. Many have never experienced genuine kindness from another human being. But Jesus specializes in impossible transformations, and I've witnessed miracle after miracle in our safe house. Girls who couldn't make eye contact learning to laugh again. Teenagers who had given up on life discovering dreams worth living for. Remember that suicide attempt I mentioned at the beginning? That happened in 2018. Even after years of walking with Jesus, trauma has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. A particularly difficult case at the safe house triggered memories I thought I had processed completely. The depression hit like a tsunami, and for a moment I forgot how far I had come. But this time was different. Instead of staying dead for eternity, Jesus brought me back after those 4 minutes and 12 seconds. In that brief moment between life and death, he whispered to my spirit, "Your work isn't finished yet. There are still daughters to rescue, still stories to rewrite, still hope to distribute to hopeless people." I woke up in that hospital room knowing my survival was intentional, my mission incomplete. I still have nightmares sometimes, still fight depression and anxiety. Healing isn't a destination you arrive at and stay forever. It's a daily choice to keep walking toward wholeness. But now I have weapons against the darkness. Prayer that connects me directly to the throne room of God. Community of believers who surround me with love and support. Hope that anchors my soul when storms try to destroy my peace. Jesus doesn't promise life without pain. He promises his presence in the pain, his strength in our weakness, his light in our darkness. Every day I wake up is a miracle I don't take for granted. Every breath is a gift. Every opportunity to help another victim is a privilege. So I'm asking you, just as a sister would, what impossible situation are you facing today? What prison seems to have no key? What abuse are you enduring that feels like it will never end? If Jesus could rescue an 8-year-old child bride from the depths of hell on earth, he can rescue you from whatever darkness surrounds you right now. My name is Yasmin, and this is how Jesus saved my life. If this story touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. There are millions of girls and women still trapped in situations like mine, living in darkness, believing there's no way out. By sharing this video, you could be the one who brings hope to someone on the edge of giving up. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss stories of hope, redemption, and transformation. Your subscription supports our rescue operations and helps us reach more victims who desperately need to know they're not forgotten. Leave a comment below sharing how this story impacted you, or if you have your own testimony of God's redemption. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Consider supporting our Safe House ministry through the link in the description. Every donation directly helps rescue and restore trafficking victims, giving them the chance at freedom that Jesus gave me. Most importantly, pray. Pray for the girls still trapped. Pray for the rescue workers risking their lives. Pray that this story reaches exactly who needs to hear it. Remember, you are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are deeply loved by the God who kneels beside broken people. No matter what you're facing, there is hope. There is healing. There is a future worth living for. Share this video. Save a life. Be the miracle someone is praying for. God bless you, and thank you for being part of this rescue mission.